so let's turn on the audio. And I think that means we're live, so let me just wait until the YouTube stream actually shows us as well. And yesterday we had some issues with the sound, that it was a bit too soft, so maybe the three of us can talk a little bit, and then people can let us know in the chat if the sound is good or not.
Yeah, sure, that sounds good.
Yeah, hopefully mine's audio is not too windy.
Yeah.
I think it sounds good from what I'm hearing now.
Cool. Awesome.
Let me just
Should we jump into it?
Yeah, I'm gonna put the sound a little bit up for you too, but I think it's all good. All right. So welcome to day number 2 of the SwiftUI series. Today we're going to be focusing on workarounds, everybody's favorite part of SwiftUI, which basically comes down to trying to make SwiftUI do things that it's not currently capable of doing, or maybe not necessarily meant to do yet. And we actually have some really nice judges today as well. Yesterday's judges were amazing. Today's might even be better, but I'll let you decide. So we have 2 people who are normally living in Canada. One of them actually is here in Europe right now, though, because the connection is better, so it was easier for us to just do it here. So let's start with you, Milan. Hi, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me here, and thank you so much for organizing this whole week.
Yeah, no worries.
Super cool.
Where are you right now?
Yeah, so now I'm in Stockholm, which is where I'm originally from. But yeah, normally I'm in Vancouver on the west coast of Canada.
A little pre-WWDC trip to calm down.
Yeah. It's getting very tight because it's like I have a week to prepare once I come back before WWDC kicks off. But
yeah, so one of the reasons, I'm not sure if you can actually hear the coffee machine, but it will go away in a sec. One of the reasons I actually asked you as a judge is that you've been working on Orbit for the last 2 years, I think, right?
Yeah.
And Orbit has a lot of SwiftUI in there, right?
Definitely, yeah. So I pretty much went dived pretty deep into SwiftUI as soon as it came out. I was super excited about the potential of exploring macOS development because I'd done a lot of iOS development in the past. But when SwiftUI came out, I thought hey, I use a Mac all the time. I want to actually build something for that. And Apple says that SwiftUI is going to be there and you can use it on all platforms. So I figured best way to do that is to stress test it on macOS and learn a new platform at the same time.
Great. Yeah. Well, you'll probably have a lot of little workarounds here and there that you maybe can share with us over the next hour or so. And to the right, for you as well, to the right of us, of Milan is Christian. Hey. And Christian, I think most people know you for the Reddit app you make called Apollo, which you, for the last year or so, have slowly been building some more SwiftUI into, right?
For sure. Yeah, I put in an update yesterday that actually has a fair bit.
Awesome.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I kind of couldn't hear it.
So I put in an update yesterday that I think the UI was primarily SwiftUI in that update for the first time since I think I did widgets the year before. So yeah, definitely big on SwiftUI now.
Yeah,
a little late to the party, but happy to be here.
Well, and actually, it's good that you're late to it, because one of the reasons I wanted you to be a judge was because you were sharing some of the, I'm not sure if frustration is the right word, but some of the amazement that you had when simple things weren't possible in SwiftUI, because you were probably replacing some parts that were UIKit with SwiftUI stuff. How do you feel about SwiftUI now after working on it for a bit?
I honestly love it overall. If I was to give a single emotion, I would say still frustrated in some areas. There's still some areas where it gives me a little bit of a head scratcher once in a while, but it just keeps you on your toes, I guess. It's just amazing how, for yesterday's update, I was redoing some paywall screens for Apollo, and I wasn't completely sure on the design, and just the fact that I was able to build out 3 different designs really quick just to A/B test them. Whereas it probably would have taken me as long to just do one in UIKit was just really, really nice.
Yeah.
So I really love that. As long as I don't have to do something crazy like set the background color on a text editor.
Who needs that anyway, right?
Yeah.
And maybe there's some nice workarounds that we'll discover today. So let me actually put the screen up. So I was actually a bit worried that we weren't going to get a lot of entries, but we got a few last minute ones, which is actually always nice.
Yeah.
So in total, we've got 6. So I think we'll be able to go through them one by one again as well, which is nice. I already went through a few. Some of them I didn't fully understand what was going on or the problem they were trying to solve, because my UIKit knowledge is a bit rusty as well. So I was like, what's this supposed to do in UIKit? But yeah, let's just have a look at them and just chat about what's going on. So the first one is by Brian, and yeah, so there were some issues at first with the code, but it seems to be all fixed now. So I'm just gonna briefly walk through it. So start from a Stack Overflow question. How do I get the scroll view to keep its position when the keyboard appears with iOS 15 Xcode 13? It's always been an issue. I think also UIKit. I used to remember there was this CocoaPods thing that keyboard appearing or something like that. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've never loved keyboards. I'm jealous of the BlackBerry developers that just have the static thing at the bottom.
And
I think Apple made a big mistake.
You would think that something like this would just be a solved problem by now, because every app has a keyboard. Well, almost every app has a keyboard, right? So
yeah, but this sort of hooks into the programmatic scrolling that I think many people have been missing in general in SwiftUI, that it's not really there by default. And I think what he wanted to do was to pin it to the top, so as soon as its keyboard appears, it scrolls to the top to sit along the keyboard.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think this is like something we would love to get from Apple directly. So I was excited to see this submission.
So I'm actually trying to open it, but it seems that an extensions file is missing. So that might give us some issues with actually running this. Yeah, I can't run it because there's an extensions file missing. So if you're watching, you can still submit like a little update, and we can have a look at it later. Actually, I guess we could look at the code and see if we can see something there, but it might be a bit hard to conceptualize it without us being able to see what's going on. So let's see, list with snap to messages, and it's a custom little thing here. Yeah, sorry, without running this, I'm not going to be able to have we're just going to be speculating about what does what, I think. So maybe we can come back to this in a bit.
Yeah.
And let's go back to Diego's issue. So Diego's issue, he has a nice little GIF that makes it easy. So oftentimes when you have a carousel or something where you want users to be able to scroll, you can use the tab view with the tab view page style or something, where you can actually like make it swipe from page to page. But the issue is if you wanted to like turn back around to the start. Yeah. Probably something most of us have seen or dealt with. And Diego actually made a solution for that to make it go round and round and round. So while I get the project, maybe you can chat a little bit about how you would approach this in SwiftUI now.
Yeah, no, what I liked about his submission, he sort of highlights the relevant snippets. So what he actually does is to add three times the amount of views that he actually normally would need, and then he sort of plays with the index as soon as you've been selecting something new. He doesn't animate directly. He changes it to be sort of a different offset so that it continuously gets that scroll view, and then once he manually added that offset, he then does the animation. And I thought it was a pretty good way of changing that to allow that sort of infinite scrolling, and still staying. I think he stays all completely in SwiftUI as well.
Yeah. So.
And so is the third one necessary because there's only the 3 items?
I believe I was thinking the same thing with whether or not 2 would be enough. I would think it is because you want to have the ones displayed on the sides.
Oh, right, because you can go bi-directional. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So it seems that it's not a scroll view though. It's like you have to tap on it, which I think makes this a lot easier, because if you would have to do this with a scroll view, you just get into the whole thing where you're just not able to get the position correct in the local space, global space, or whatever it's called.
No, that was something I was slightly missing. Like I would love to be able to like snap it, but that is a lot more work, because you need to then you also need to account for the scenario where you might be able to like just go back and forth without actually snapping it. But I think it is. Okay, I think you want both use cases.
So from my understanding, right? So there's three cards, and then there's 3 cards to the left and the right of that.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I click on one card to the right, so as soon as I click on bus here, I'm still in the first 3, so nothing super crazy. But then as soon as I go to this one, do the first 3 get pushed to the end? Is that how it works, or?
I would have to
that was my understanding.
So basically,
I believe it basically changes. Yeah, that's pretty much what it's doing. So if you look here at the indexes, it checks first the direction, and then it basically jumps, changes it to be a different part of that of those sort of 9 elements, and then it does the animation afterwards.
So
yeah, it's a little bit of a magic trick.
Yeah, so I would think that this is too simple of a way to solve it, but I guess it works. It works consistently, because there's always like some time before it actually moves to the next one. So even if you go super fast, it just gets the job done. And I also thought it would be a lot more code than this, but it's just very, like, most of the logic is in this part here, right?
I agree.
Has any of you ever tried to do like a carousel kind of thing in SwiftUI?
I did. Funnily enough, in the update I put out yesterday, I have like a little view where it's a bunch of app icons, and it kind of just scrolls by, kind of like they would in the App Store. I think I was talking to Jordy about this. It just kind of pans over all the app icons slowly. So it's not quite as involved as this, and that it's not interactive, because I couldn't quite figure that out. And you can't go both directions. It kind of just animates left to right. But I did a similar solution, where it, since I was only going one direction, it just doubles up. And when you get to the last index, it kind of seamlessly shifts you. This looks.
No, I needed something similar, but I ended up wrapping a UIKit component in my solution.
Wow.
Sometimes I mean, UIKit is good for stuff too. So, but I do really like this approach.
Jordy, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I was actually looking at this thing. So I was wondering what would happen in landscape mode. But it seems to be working there as well, although you see a little bit at the left side there. But yeah, so but I guess those edge cases you could probably figure out as well, because I guess they just didn't necessarily look at that too much. But what my solution would be is just to not do a carousel right now. My approach with anything, if I get stuck in SwiftUI, is just if I need to spend more than 30 minutes on it, unless it's like a core feature of the app, right? Then I just try to avoid it and just say, okay, hopefully next year. And that's easier for me to say, because I don't have to support as many older versions, and I can just say, okay, iOS 16 from tomorrow.
And I definitely changed my mindset on that. When I started out using SwiftUI, I was like, I mean, it was partly because I didn't know AppKit as well, but I was like, I gotta do everything in SwiftUI and I will make it work. But at this point, I have worked on a lot of other SwiftUI projects, but then I know sort of where the shortcomings are. And in some scenarios, I found that like UIKit is there. It is Apple has really provided a nice way for us to interface with UIKit directly, and AppKit as well. So then I tend to like move over to do that rather than trying to sort of force the system too much. But I do think some scenarios there are things that just should be where you can still stay within the SwiftUI world. But I think in some scenarios, I do like to look into that, and then as soon as Apple replaces it with a new SwiftUI thing, I will take out that.
So you're not necessarily SwiftUI purist. You're just a practical person, like just
well,
whatever gets a job
I mean,
done?
I definitely was at the beginning, but I think now I know what SwiftUI is like amazing at, and there are many things there. But I also know that there are still things being worked on. So,
and also
when
you know the shortcomings, you also automatically, at least for me, like you start avoiding certain solutions. Like, oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that in SwiftUI, so let me just not even think of that. Whereas I think, Kristen, you're coming from the other side where you're slowly putting SwiftUI into, I guess, mostly UIKit project. Is there Objective-C in there as well? I don't know.
No, I'm not that crotchety, thankfully. But I'm jealous of Milan because I'm not quite at that stage yet where I have that intuition as to what's missing. So I'll go down the other route of like building it completely in SwiftUI, and then I'll be like, okay, when I swipe, the momentum's a little too fast. Let me just set the deceleration rate a little lower. And then I'm like, oh, I can't. And then I have to rebuild the entire thing in UIKit. Whereas if I had that intuition at the beginning to be like, oh, this isn't there, maybe I'll try as I'm sure Milan's saying, the UI view representable stuff. Probably would have saved me a bit of time.
But I honestly think that's the right approach because, and I felt like the fact that I started with macOS meant that I also sort of forced myself to only use SwiftUI in the beginning. And I think if I would have done it on iOS and defaulted into UIKit, I wouldn't have learned it as quickly. So I think it's good that you are like pushing yourself to try to do everything in SwiftUI. And in general, that's sort of what I recommend people to do, because then you really know the ins and outs of it, and you might run into a lot of frustration, but then you know how to handle it and how to deal with it. And it's a good way of sort of learning it.
And it's hopefully temporary as well, because I think in the next 2 or 3 years we should be seeing all these like small issues getting fixed, right? I mean, I think last 2 years
I think iOS 15 did an awesome job of like patching like a lot of the stuff, so it wouldn't surprise me if iOS 16 comes in and does the rest.
And it's also, at first it was just, I think in the first SwiftUI we didn't even have a map, for example. Like SwiftUI 2 only added it. So there were these major things that first needed to be added as well, alongside all these sort of niche behaviors. And you can discuss if it's niche to have a carousel, I guess. But well, curious to see in 2 weeks. But so to wrap up, I think like it's a very clean and simple little hack. Pure SwiftUI, as you said as well, Milan, which I think is really nice. And I guess once you have this built in, it's quite robust, and you can probably use it for all the carousel kind of views, and would probably work well with different sizes there as well. So yeah, good job.
I'm questioning the color scheme as well, but I guess that's not fair.
Yeah, luckily there's no design element in our judging today. But let's see, where did I put my view? All right, so the next one is by Diona Lee Samfuk. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I think she also entered yesterday in the speedrun event. So let's see what she worked on. I think she a ProgressView style to customize the size and colors of the ProgressView. Ooh, this is something I actually struggle with myself for a while. This comes to what you were saying, Christian, about the text editor backgrounds. Like a lot of these standard elements, you can only basically use them as if they're completely native UI. I think the same is true for the ProgressView.
So it's just blue by default? It's blue.
Yeah, I think you can give it like a tint color or something, or an accent color.
Yeah, but you cannot change the background of the sort of the gray background of the loader where it sits in. I think that was the fun thing I liked a lot about this, and the size.
So these are like some of these small things that you can do to really make the progress bar feel more like part of your app or your style, right? Because if you have like a very chunky style, for example, or playful, and then you have this very basic bar, it kind of gets in the way of a super clear example, of course. So let's have a look at that code. Do you have any of these sliders in Orbit, Milan?
Not in Orbit. I had something similar in another project I worked on. And I think I used a similar approach to what this person was doing, actually.
The stamp of approval.
Yeah. No, it's, I had a look at the code, sneak peek beforehand, and found it to be very clean.
All right, I'm trying to get it up. Should be here any second. Yeah, so it's basically what we were seeing before, of course. So you can change the thickness, corner radius, and the background color you were talking about before. So maybe Milan, since you had a look at the code already, would you take the lead on describing what's happening here?
Yeah, sure. So for the ProgressView, you can actually provide, it's one of the SwiftUI components that does allow some customization. So you can have a custom ProgressView style. And I believe that's the approach they went with. So they have this custom view modifier style. So if you go into the bar there, this itself is basically an extension on the view so that you can provide this modifier. And if you look there, I believe it's a set stack, which takes the width of the screen or the width that you provided. And then it has two rectangles there. One of them is the bottom fill one that has that sort of tint onto it. And then the top one is the one that actually takes the progress. And then all of that gets its like corner radius applied to it. So they're both the same.
So actually they're basically making a completely new view and just taking the values from that progress view then.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really nice solution. Although the problem is that although you can use this now for the progress view, like not all these standard elements allow you to create your own custom views, or at least some of them just don't deal with it for some reason. But for example, if you know on the Apple Watch that circular view for your progress, like your workouts. If you wanted to make something like that, you would probably take an approach like this as well, and then just use a circle, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. You could probably then you could, instead of a fill, you could apply a gradient fill to that as well. Yeah, or if you want to have some type of bar graph, you can do similar approach as well.
Yeah, and using the geometry reader so that it's like size independent. I always still struggle with this, so I don't really go to it that often because in the past I had bad experiences with it. But how do you two feel about the geometry reader? Do you use it in your projects?
I'm using it where I need it, but I'm trying to be cautious because it can have some sort of side effects where it impacts the size of the view in some scenarios. So I try to sort of isolate it. Yeah, you do the same?
Yeah, I find like everyone is always like, only use it if you have to. And then whenever I do wrap something in it, I'm like, okay, I've got this beautiful view on screen. It's rendering perfectly. I just need to know how big it is. And then I wrap it in one, and then it's suddenly completely different. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing something wrong. But someone on Twitter mentioned like you can do like the you like overlay a background onto it that's the clear color, and then you measure the size of the clear color with a geometry reader. And that makes like a size like a geometry reader that doesn't affect the size, and that's been more fruitful in my experience. But yeah, in general, I'm terrified of geometry.
The fact that there's such a hack necessary to get that type of information without messing all your views up is maybe one of the biggest signs that we need some more improvements, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, like it's basically these two pieces. Like most of this is just boilerplate to get everything to work. So this is where all the fancy stuff happens, and basically comes down to making a custom progress view style. Then passing in the colors, and then based on that, like this is where the magic happens. So I wonder though if there's some behavior in the default progress view that maybe is not in here now, but yeah, the progress view is quite simple, especially if you don't do anything fancy with animating it, and even then you could probably do that as well. There's some stuff here that the minimum width, which is nice if you want to make sure it's not 0 or something.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of was I almost wonder, like this person did such a great job that I almost wonder at this point, is there a big benefit in not just having it be a custom component? like I imagine like it's not a super complex component. So like I was thinking there's probably some accessibility on label benefits you get. But at the same time, it's not an interactable component. So I was thinking like the accessibility concerns are probably limited to just reading the value back to like voiceover. So I'd almost wonder if it would be better just to because I would almost be afraid Apple tweaks progress bar in some future update and this all breaks. Whereas with a custom component, you'd maybe have a little more, but that's this is super well done overall.
And I guess what you're saying, like this element is so simple that there's probably not any accessibility issues, but if you start tweaking some of the more complex ones, those are things you have to keep in the back of your mind when you're trying to do like a fully custom view. So I guess that's where the view style modifier thing would come in handy, because then underwater most of the stuff stays the same. But yeah, I think that's also one of those things that people probably overlook when they're, all right, I just need to make it work and look like this, and then it's not accessible at all anymore. Like I'm not sure what happens, for example, now if I change the text size or something like that. You actually see like the original one. Oh, I guess it's quite similar.
Yeah, the original one doesn't seem to grow in height either. It's a bit surprising.
Yeah, it's one of those components that I'm not even sure had much happen to it in the great iOS 6 to 7 shift. Like it seems like somebody wrote it in iOS 1.0 or whatever, and it's been pretty solid since then.
All right, let me just.
Or maybe there's an entire crackpot team who works on UI slider that I just offended. Sorry.
But then you could almost make this one more accessible than the default Apple one.
Yeah, exactly.
You could listen to you could calculate the height based on the font size that's being used as well.
Assuming that that's actually something that people would want. I would assume that they did a lot of research on keeping it small, or maybe not necessarily research, but there must be a reason for it. But I think overall, like really nice, clean hack, which allows you to customize it with maybe like 20 lines of code. So yeah, really good job.
Yeah, I agree.
Then let's go to Nathan. As a heads up, the label dividers look missing. This is only during the screen recording. You can run the simulator and see that all labels actually have proper dividers. So what are we looking at here? Is there any audio as well? No, I guess it's just like a multi-select picker, which if you use the default picker, that's actually like not possible. So from that point of view already, it's good. Let me grab the code so we can have a little look at what's going on there. This is NL Workaround. Have you had to build anything like this in your projects?
Yes, I have. I think this is something that you have a lot of use cases for, and I'd expect Apple to release it this year. Like this seems like a natural thing for them to provide next.
But almost puzzlingly, like there's not a great almost like UI for this in UIKit even, is there? Like I guess you could use like like a table view and like track everything manually, but I mean there's not as like I don't think like I think I've implemented something similar to this in UIKit as well.
Yeah, I'm also trying to think if there's anything I know on how to do it, but no.
I feel really rusty when it comes to UIKit now. Now when you mention it, I'm like,
yeah, I'm trying to think.
Okay, so
because I did something similar in SwiftUI, but it's I didn't do multi-select. It was just single select, and I think I cheated and just used like a vertical stack now. So this is probably a little more robust.
All right, so let's have a look at how they did it. Select the label for issue, select the labels, and then we have a list. So I guess it's just a list, a simple list here. A lot of, what do you call this again? The pyramid of...
Pyramid of doom, hell.
Yeah, I would probably do the same there as well.
Any negative word. I guess this looks very simple. It's just basically a list where with buttons, and then as soon as you click on it, the label list, you just check the index for the current word or the current thing you want to select. made a little label type here, and then this basically turns it to true or false. I would say there's probably more elegant ways to do this instead of maybe like just a custom object or something, like a struct. But yeah, it gets the job done. And so I'm trying to see how do they actually switch if you see the list or not. If show label selector, and yeah, this. So I guess this is just yeah, just an on tap gesture. So the things that you kind of miss here is the nice animations that you would get with the default what is it called, disclosure group, I think.
Okay.
So
if you just wrap that in with animation, it wouldn't give you that. I assume probably.
I was thinking the same thing too.
Probably do some like opacity animation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Boom. And you see some here at the little corner. You see that it's like a rounded thing, but I think that's even the case with the disclosure group sometimes. But the disclosure group is basically like a default element for for like expanding stuff. So I'm not sure if you would be able to put like a list in there. And also you can see here the animation is also sometimes, I don't know, a bit strange.
And you get the nice little the chevron animates in yours, which is nice.
So those are the types of things you would have to start doing yourself as well if you so I guess they just change it here. So what they could do to actually make it they could do something like angle, I think, right? What is it? Angle degrees.
Isn't it degrees? Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And then let's do something like this, I guess. And then it should animate as well. So that would make it, yeah. So I guess with like a few more hacks on top of the hack, you can actually make a component that, yeah, it's super usable, I would say. And I can imagine that they didn't spend days working on this, but this is already like a really nice implementation that you could just use in a if you have an edit view or something. And I also like there's no fancy stuff going on. It's just very clear and to the point.
What would you say the benefit of doing this over a disclosure group would be?
So I'm actually not sure how with disclosure group how it would actually if it would look nice with the list, but let me see if I have one here. I don't have one here. Yeah, I could have a look later, but it's disclosure group.
But you can embed those in tables typically?
Yeah, let me just.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would be a disclosure group with the table inside of it.
Something like this. Sorry for messing up all your code. I'm not sure if this is going to work by default, but
I don't know how that works with the scroll. If it's a scrollable, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I guess then we would have to
get rid of the chevron.
Yeah. So I guess this will be the native implementation, and then you would just have the list. There's an extra indentation going on here.
I quite like that I like that indentation.
Yeah, it kind of shows
some structure to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess you could do something like insets. What is it called? Let's go insets, and then just do. I don't know. I guess these default ones are 12 or something. You could remove it in that way if you want. I guess. Yeah, you can make it look normal, or not normal necessarily. So
where you're completely rewriting his code, did you want to get rid of the warning too? Or sorry, I don't know.
Ooh, none.
Isn't it that the list type has to be an integer?
I have no clue. Non-constant range argument must be.
I think it's just you need like the length of the list can be variable if they add more items to it. So I think it needs to you need to loop over the label list items itself.
Yeah. So you maybe do something like this. Although I saw something this morning that said you need to use zip and then enumerate or something, or enumerate and then.
I think if you just did for each label list, it might work.
Do you think in each is it sort of a tuple? Do you want to use the first element instead?
I guess we could go a lot of directions here. Yeah. I think that the nicest
probably isn't the spirit of the competition.
I think the nicest solution would be just to make a label type struct and then just do it in that way. You can make it identifiable and everything. But yeah, I think overall it's already like I could revert it now to the old code, but I think it's like a really nice, simple, not simple, like a very practical solution for it. So good job there. Let me see, what was their name again? NLA Barbera. I guess that's Nathan.
He did an excellent.
Then we'll go to Ryan. Let me have a look at what Ryan is working on. So for this one, I actually have to get my phone out. So rotates any view so that it matches the device orientation if it's in an array of allowed orientations. When building this app, I wanted the app to be portrait only, but the image view to rotate with the phone. Although this can be done UIKit, SwiftUI doesn't have any way to control allowed orientation per view. The app only allows portrait and landscape left orientation, but the content can be set to rotate to any number of orientations. Oh, we actually have a video that's going to save me having to figure out my phone. So let's have a look at this. Is there some audio there as well? Yes. Let me start it from the start.
Oh, it's Ryan. Ryan's a very smart individual.
Yeah, no, Ryan always, he has a lot of different frameworks that he's been creating based on the apps that he's been working on. And I always like how much work he puts into just wrapping it up, making it a nice component. And he also adds nice documentation to those things.
Yeah, so there's actually a voiceover here. You two cannot hear it, but the viewers can. So let's have a look at this for a minute. All right, so basically what he shows is that you have your phone set to, or your app set to portrait only, but you still want some of the views to switch. His modifier allows that, but also the other way around, where if you wanted to not twist when the rest of the UI does switch, which seems like super practical to have in a lot of situations. I'm really curious to see how he did that. I kind of missed what you were saying at the start though, Milan. You were talking about Ryan and his libraries.
Oh yeah, no, I was mentioning that. So Ryan usually goes to a meetup I'm organizing, and he has worked on his own apps. But what I really like is that he often creates those like nice components and public repos about the things that he's been working on. So definitely think he puts a lot of thought into the documentation and making it reusable, which is always cool to see.
Okay, apparently people couldn't hear the voiceover, so we could have just kept talking. Sorry about that. Let me grab his project and put it up here. And I still have not updated my Xcode, so we're going to go down one version to 15.4, and let's have a look at what's going on here.
Are you going to rotate your Mac?
I guess it would just, it listens to this, so that's great. So just to explain the behavior a bit, if you would put your app into portrait only modes, not sure why this one does change, the others don't.
If I had to guess, I think he's probably using core motion rather than the actual device orientations. I think that's a bit of Ryan's bread and butter. So it wouldn't surprise me if the simulator doesn't send the core motion events.
That might be interesting. Let's have a look. So he has an extra modifier on the frame up little view. Rotation, matching, orientation. So rotates the view and alters its frame. Let's have a look.
Look at that documentation.
Yeah. I know, right? This is what I always think I will be going back and add myself, my own code, and then he did it.
It's actually, there's a keyboard shortcut for it. Do you know about that one? So
No.
if you highlight this, and I think it's Control Command. No, it's So it's Option Command / and then it looks at your function and it's
Is there a keyboard shortcut to fill everything in?
There might be some machine learning stuff for that in the future, where you just let the computer figure out what's going on. All right, so what do we have here? Yeah, so the allowed rotations, obviously, which you can toggle here with the switches, and then a rotation.
Looks like probably the bulk of it is in that modifier struct.
All right, this might take
I don't see core motion yet.
No, you're right. So how does that work?
So I think he has two things.
I know Ryan, it's in here somewhere.
No.
So I'm just trying to get,
wow.
If you scroll down, I think here the body is basically where he's listening to all the events. He had some notes in the repo. So the on change, on receive, those are the ones that sort of trigger underlying behavior. Which
is kind of like the simple man score motion, because you don't have to do the calculations yourself, and the OS just tells you. I would expect that not to work when I guess it makes sense for it to work, because even if your app is portrait only, you would still want to get those kind of events. And so every time,
because I guess it's on the device.
Yeah, so every time the device or the OS detects that you change the orientation, it basically calls the change orientations method, which it checks whether it's on or not, of course. Or is it change orientation? Which one does it call? Change orientations. Okay, and then.
Yeah, and then he gets the actual device orientation. He changed it to that one. So he calls two different ones.
And then where does he actually change the view? Oh, here. Oh, okay, yeah. So because it's a modifier, actually, so he gets this is the content of the view that you apply the modifier to, and then just puts a rotation effect on that. And that's why he's using the geometry reader as well, because the view might change in different sizes if you change your phone to or your device to a different orientation. So definitely, as you compare it to the other one, the previous project, a lot more complex, but still in a very like SwiftUI way, where it's just using all these. It's not using any like dirty hacks, I would say. It's just adding features to this view. And also, like, once you've set it up once, this will work in a lot of different scenarios. I would wonder though, how if you would want to apply it to like certain screen, would you then just apply the modifier to the entire screen? I could imagine that it can trip it up quite easily if there's a lot of complex UI going on. I'm not trying to downplay the solution.
As in like if you have nested UI component and you apply it to the outer one, I would think.
Yeah, because this is really tricky to solve even in UIKit. Like I have something similar in Apollo, and it was a lot of hitting my head on a desk trying to figure it out.
But I believe, I mean, it applies it to the whole sort of stack of content. Yeah, so now I would probably only apply to the logo. Yeah.
It's trippy too when you're looking at the simulator, because it's not moving with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry, Ryan, for messing it up, because this is probably there for a very good reason. But yeah. Anything else any of you want to say about this one?
No, it looks super cool. I didn't even know something like this would have been possible in SwiftUI. I'm a little shook that it's not with core motion, but I'll recover.
Yeah, the main thing. I'm sorry, go on.
No, I think it's really cool, and I definitely see. Like, I don't think it's something you will use every day in apps, but when you want it, like you really want to have like maybe an image that you can tap and the view in like full screen mode, and you want to be able to rotate that. I think it's really neat for those type of things. And yeah, I think it's a clean solution, and also like hooking into all of those events, like the device rotation events. I like it.
Yeah, and I'm also surprised that it works so well, like with resizing the view and everything.
Yeah, it's one I wish Apple would implement natively, because it's like my girlfriend's one of those people that leaves their phone in portrait lock mode permanently. Whenever she goes to show me a picture, and it's like I'm trying to rotate the phone to see it, and I'm like, I wish there was a way for the Photos app to ignore rotation, but everywhere else do. But yeah, I guess you have to do stuff like what Ryan's done here in order to accomplish that in your own app.
So we actually have one of the entries actually was accidentally deleted. So we have an extra entry, which is going to be nice, by Jerome, which was one of the winners from yesterday. So no pressure there. But we'll get to we'll get to him now. Actually, he's in the middle here. So let's see what Jerome made. Oh yeah, I actually looked at this already. So you can see here there's a scroll view, and in each section there's a horizontal scroll view as well. And what they wanted to achieve here is to actually sync all those scroll views up. Which, yeah, when I thought like, okay, yeah, that's just something that's not possible in SwiftUI, but it actually is. And he did cheat a little bit by digging into UIKit. He's not using like something like introspect, but it's a similar technique to what introspect is using. And introspect, has either of you used introspect?
I haven't used it directly, but I used it to sort of bug stuff and look into things myself.
Christian, have you used it?
Yeah, there was a few instances where, like, keep going back to the update I shipped yesterday, where I have a paywall screen that you can list the features, where it lists the features rather, and it on most devices it's viewable without needing to scroll, like it's only a few features, but on like smaller iPhones, you got less room, so you have to scroll. And in UIKit, you can just set always bounce vertical but false, and it'll only basically act like a scroll view if it's compressed. And that, for whatever reason, isn't in SwiftUI yet. And it was it just felt janky on screens where you had tons of room and the scroll view would bounce around. And yeah, with introspect, it was pretty much one line just to add the UIKit components. So
yeah, can you give
handy in that case.
Short explanation for people who don't know introspect, like how it actually works, if you know?
Yeah, so basically, not to pull a Santa Claus isn't real thing, but behind SwiftUI, most of the components are UIKit. And so stuff like introspect basically yanks the curtain back and finds the UIKit component, and then just treats it like a modifier in SwiftUI. So you can, I forget the syntax, but it's something like find scroll view on the scroll, or find UI scroll view on the scroll view object in SwiftUI, and then you have a reference to that, and then you can access all the handy properties UIKit has, like always bounce vertical or the deceleration rate. Yeah, and it's a hack, but sometimes when it's bad or re-implementing UIKit, it's kind of handy to have.
Yeah, and it's like it always works in the same way. You can just do the find scroll view kind of thing, and then just get the properties there, so you don't have to do anything weird every time you want to do something special there. So I think it's a super useful tool, although there is the worry that maybe in the next version of iOS, this underlying thing has changed, so maybe stuff breaks there. But I would assume that for most common things, such as scroll views, there's in the 3 months when the iOS is in beta, they probably will find like a way around it, or worst case, you just have to do a version check and just do it in a different way in a new version, or fall back to UIKit, I guess. But especially for these things that we expect to be there right from day one, it's nice to be able to do that in a way that actually, because you change the actual properties of the view behind the scenes.
Sometimes it'll fight you, like so it doesn't always work. Sometimes you'll change it in UIKit or SwiftUI or whatever. We'll be like, I'm gonna change that back the next time the run loop updates or whatever. So you got to test it, but it's most of the time it works pretty good.
All right. So meanwhile, I've put the code up, but first let's have a look at their description. So so you needed to sync like the position of these things, and also need to make sure that the offsets were the same. And the approach was basically to sync all the widths. I used a quite known technique of the geometry reader to read, in quotation marks, the width of a view, but instead of storing it in a state, I stored it in a key width dictionary inside an observable object named width store, which I think is basically some store above, like on a higher level, so that all the others can read from that. It's done in the sync width key view operator. That's a view modifier responsible to get the width store, read the width, add it to the store. And then there's some scroll sync stuff. So yeah, let's have a look at what's going on here. So starts with a simple list. So vertical simple list, which all have a font view. And they pass the environment object for the synchronizer in the width store. So let's have a look in the fonts view. It's a VStack. Why is it a VStack? Oh, okay, yeah, because of the title here. And then a font attributes view. So this is, I think, where the magic really happens, which is a horizontal scroll view that gets this offset that gets passed as a modifier. So if you would remove this, I think it would just be very simple scroll view. Yeah. So far this would be like something you can make in SwiftUI in 30 minutes or something, but then this is where the magic happens. So let's have a look at what's going on in this sync content offset. Yes, so that's the sync content offset modifier. So let's see. So this has the environment object for the synchronizer thing. So let's have a look in there later. But yeah, so here the inject view controller, I guess, is similar to the scroll view, the introspect stuff, right?
I imagine, yeah. I have my holy water ready.
Yeah, I think he uses a similar approach to what you described earlier, Christian, that he has a background, like a transparent background, to get the size of everything.
Yeah, because here there's a background that there's nothing in there, and then there's the representable and injected view controller. So yeah, I guess we just have to trust that this gets the underlying scroll view or gets the underlying stuff.
So I'm almost confused what it's doing. It's creating a view controller for every individual scroll view on the screen.
Maybe if you're going to perform handle, if needed, we can get some clarity in that. I think that's a, oh yeah, that calls the handle. So what is the handle function that's being passed in here? Oh, there. No, so I think it's a callback. He passes a function in to that view controller, and I believe that's what uses this. That's being used to size up the view itself, and then he figures out. Then he uses that to synchronize the all of the keys.
Oh, that's clever.
So if you, Jody, if you go out one level, where is this actually called from? The inject view controller. Oh yeah, here you see we get the view controller.
The view modifier. Okay.
And then okay, and then he adds
then we add
the scroll
to be
view.
One of the synchronizations. Yeah.
And that's all the fancy stuff in here. So every time one of them changes, basically, what happens then? So you registers them. This is like magic to me. So if any of you guys have anything to say, I'm like a bit out of my league here.
I would agree.
Glad we have some comments. So when a user is interacting with the scroll view, we store its content offset. So observation depends. So yeah, so this is an observer for this particular scroll view. So every time a new scroll view gets added, this is just an observer. And then so we check, all right, is there a new value for the scroll offset? If so, then we change the content offset, and then
which means that's being synced up with all of them.
Yeah, exactly. So then all of the scroll views that are being observed then get this new offset.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at it that way, this is like super simple. I mean, I don't know why you put all this work into it. It's obviously, this is obviously the solution, right?
No, I found that as soon as you start to involve preference keys, it becomes a bit more sort of just to follow the code. It tends to be a few different layers you have to go through, because if you look here, he uses the preference keys to sync the content offset, but he also needs to use that in the sync with the key on line 24, because basically what you need to do, and it was a while ago I used preference keys, but you need to basically like use the same key to determine the width. You identify the width by a key, and then you synchronize it. You synchronize all of the width of all the views that have the same key by that preference key. So it's a bit like you have to apply it to the elements, but then also apply it to the view itself to synchronize it.
Yeah, and then you do the preference chains thing.
Yeah, and this is the color clear at the background where he gets the actual size of it.
Oh yeah.
So there are actually two things going on here, and I think that's why it feels like a lot of code, because it is the synchronization of all of the labels being the same. So if we look at the video again, we can see that all the ones in the first column have the same width, and the ones in the second column have the same width. So that's where the preference keys come
So I'm actually curious what's going to happen if I take off the sync width. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, it still works, but then you get this kind of issues where you can scroll one further than the other, or you're done.
And it's hard to compare them as well if you want to like read it in that direction.
Yeah, now it feels like a table, right? So super clean this way.
So it's definitely one of those areas where it's a bit of a head scratcher. There's not just like a .content offset. On scroll view, you can set like a state variable on. But
has any of you ever found any good tutorials on this kind of stuff, like with the preferences and passing that? Because for me, this concept, I just can't grasp this concept that's going on here.
Yeah, I believe the people at Objective-C.io had some content on preference keys in particular. I remember using that for making a settings pane for macOS to align like all of the labels in a very macOS way. But that was a while ago. I looked at that. There might be more content now.
I mean, I guess this project is a good one to look at, because once you know what the project does, you can just like go through it one by one. So yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that, Jerome. So then we have one here at the bottom, then we're going to loop back to the start to see if that one is now works with the extensions. So this is SwiftUI. Does not this is by Daniel. SwiftUI does not allow programmable screen navigation out of the box. Has many bugs and limited screen manipulation capabilities. This repository provides a workaround to use routing programmatically. So a common complaint about SwiftUI is when people say that navigation is hard to control if it's more complex than just pushing and sheet stuff. Have you had to deal with that, Milan, in Orbit or anything else?
Yeah, for a few different things. So the one that's the most obvious one is popping to root, like that type of behavior that people are pretty used to. That's one place where I want to have like some control of the navigation flow. Another one was for deep linking, especially when we started implementing quick notes and shortcuts, quick actions and shortcuts. Yeah, because we had you might have, so in Orbit it's an invoicing app, and you might have taken notes about an invoice, and then you want to navigate and display that invoice directly. And there were definitely some things around that where we want to select the right tab, and then we ideally would want to scroll to that invoice and then want to display the invoice. And I think deep linking in general has it. As soon as you display it as a sheet, it's a lot easier. But if you want to have any sort of deeper navigational hierarchy, that's the
and without having to push people step by step through all the things. So in this video, they basically show pushing, presenting a sheet, presenting full screen, and then also at the end popping to root.
So there's no pop to root in SwiftUI?
No.
See, I cheat. I just I wrap everything in UI hosting controllers and use UIKit when I do for navigation stuff. But okay.
No, unfortunately, no, not.
There's not, and there's some hacky ways to do it. But I'm very curious to see how Daniel did it. So let's have a look. I just need to. If you can keep talking for 2 seconds while I find the project, because I obviously closed my Finder window.
Milan, do you know What did the, do you know, well, you know what the goat ate for breakfast?
What the goat eats for breakfast. Is that your question?
Yeah, it's not, yeah, let's go with that.
I have no idea. I feel like it's probably a pun here, right? No?
Jordy, any ideas?
I was too busy focusing on my Xcode project, so no, I'm gonna pass on this one. What is it?
Right. It's goat meal.
Yeah.
That's the best I can do on short notice.
It was like 1 second and you started it, so I give you full credit for that pun. Meanwhile, let's look at what we have here. So I can push. Okay, this seems to all work, so that's nice. Let's see, where does it all happen? Screen router.
Yeah.
So the entire app is basically has the screen router as an environment object, so that this can be used throughout each screen below. So let's have a look at the main view first.
Sure.
Just to have a look. And the body of this main view is actually screen router start. So it seems like we're going into screen router anyway. That's probably somewhere in here.
Who submitted this one?
This was submitted by Daniel. And that's a router. Okay, so there's some generic stuff in here. I don't really know how to deal with that, so you're gonna have to guide me through this all. So, what do you want me to click on?
Yeah, I'd like to see the screen router. So I've seen many people wanting to use like the router protocol. That is pretty common in UIKit, that you have sort of a router which decides which view that goes where, and you can often use it for dependency injection to determine like which data to pass in where. So it is a pattern I've seen commonly used, and I know many people want to use that for SwiftUI. I wonder if it's the same.
So this is the router class itself, and there's a factory, and then there's a stack, and there's some extension stuff going on here for the most commonly used navigation items, I think. So yes, is there anything you'd like to share about this?
See.
Oh,
yeah,
it seems we lost Christian actually.
Yes, I saw that. I hope it's just temporary.
Probably, yeah. Maybe the fire alarm went off. So
yeah,
let me put you up here, and then we have Milan, and then
sure.
I'm just gonna make you fill both of the windows now, so people
well,
cannot.
It's a big role to fill.
So, something like this. Nah, I'm just gonna move this out of the way. All right, so
yeah.
Yes.
So was the screen type, was that so it's generic of a screen type, right? Or what's the type of screen type?
Christian's back.
Oh, there we go. Now Christian's back. Now I have to toggle the window.
All right.
We're glad to see you back.
What happened, Chris? Fire alarm? We can't hear you, so I'm not sure if you're muted or.
It's just connecting to audio, so you might have some network connectivity issues. We can hear you now, Christian.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. I love these Intel Macs. They have like the battery life of the.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah. Judy, are you still changing
no. Everything should be good now. I'm worried what will happen if we switch to the other view, but this is fine for now. So yeah, what's going on here?
So I believe what it does is that it has a stack of all of the views it has a stack that is basically dedicated to keeping track of all of the views that are view controls that are being added. And then the present sheet is appending those to the stack, appending all of the views. and then the dismiss last is just popping those off the stack. But the navigate to is probably the one that is that is actually using navigation links, I would assume, to present new ones. Oh yeah, because we also have presentation type, so we have model, push or pull. So it's basically a stack that keeps track of everything, and it doesn't matter which type it is. Oh, there's a lot of code in there. Yeah, so this is the router object that we looked at before.
Yeah. Once again, I'm gonna have to mention that this is pretty much magic to me. So I'm just gonna be clicking. I'm just gonna be clicking on things here.
I'm curious what the start function does, because I believe that's what basically. I mean, that's in the view. This is what kicks off everything. So
so let's see where was that start function actually.
If you scroll down, it's just on line 58.
Oh yeah, you're right. So. Creates a binding.
Okay, so this would return the stack, which I assume would be just, initially it would just be the view itself, the first view.
True, and then makes a body.
Yeah, just have the one item.
Makes a body for each screen.
Yeah. So I assume it starts off with making that, and that's the UI that's going to be presented then. And then when we set new ones.
But where does the view actually get made in this case? Like where just these nice buttons and everything.
Make body for screen. What is the screen? It does routing stack binding screen. What are binding screens?
Yeah, so that's so that's this internal binding thing, so that they can actually do something when the binding gets called.
So it's all the views in the stack. So I believe the first one is just, if you look at the initializer, the stack is set to the router context. So in here, here is start. And that one takes the root screen, but I don't know what that screen is. So that's the screen. Okay, so I think the way it works is that this one keeps track of all of the stacks, but when it's first being initialized, it is adding this router context, which I assume is some type of view, and then that is being triggered in that's what's being presented from start. Since it's a view builder, that's the view we will have as the key one, and then from there, I assume that one has the buttons that presents all of the additional views and adds them to the stack.
All right, so there's a routes view here.
Yeah.
Where does that get called?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the starting view. Yeah. So is that called from the start function?
Where's the starting view used? Okay, yeah, here, that's in the start. Okay, so there's different. Okay. It's the factory method for actually making the body, and then depending on what type of.
Yeah.
And they're just subclassing it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on here, but it's like once you put it all together, it's not necessarily complex.
Yeah, it took a bit.
It's doing a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be made so that it can actually do this. But once you see it, it's actually, it's not simple for me at least, but it makes sense of what's going on here.
Yeah.
But it's such a shame that all of this stuff is necessary to be able to achieve this stuff.
Would you mind testing the pop to root functionality? I'm curious.
I can let me check. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 pop to root. Yeah, seems to work. I also like that there's no crazy animations. It's just like one back animation, and it actually So
I think impressive. I would have expected worse.
The solution I use in one of my apps is a lot dirtier, and it actually adds something in all the views in between, and then on all of those views calls the dismiss thing. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna have a look at this one.
Would you mind going back to the pop to root function? Just one view further.
Pop to roots. This one. This one.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it removes all the last ones apart from the one that's displayed.
Oh,
the root.
So that's like the
one.
remove last end function, not the remove last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's nice.
Really cool workaround, really good hack, and especially something that you want to spend some time on at the start to make sure that it works well, because it's going to be super foundational for fundamental for your entire app stack. So I think there's a lot of different approaches for this. So I'm curious, I don't think we can answer that right now, but maybe how this compares to some of the other approaches that people came up with. And let's just hope that it's no longer necessary at some point.
Yeah, I'd also like to spend some more time with this to see how you could use sort of hook into this navigation stack and the routing logic if you want to come from something like a push notification and deep link into content and determine which screen. Yeah, I'm curious how that would fit in.
All right, so the first entry was actually updated so that the extensions folder should work now. So let me download that and see if it actually works now. I still get a red extensions directory, so I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong.
Is it on GitHub?
It's on the it's on the latest list with.
Like, is the extensions folder there?
Oh, it's not. Rename extension.swift to list with snap2/extensions. Yeah, I think the extension just didn't sync. So
yeah, so the extension file is in the GitHub repo. What was the error you got?
It's the extensions file is just not. I think like in the Xcode project file it's there, but the actual extension is
actual file isn't
it's not there.
Check them.
So I'm not sure like what actually. Maybe it's a super simple thing that's in there that we can just recreate. Probably not.
Could you go to the folder in Finder and see maybe he or she renamed it to something else? It's there, but it's not being detected.
So this is crazy. Like there's an extensions file here, so maybe I can just use this. Let's see.
Yeah.
You could try removing the reference in Xcode and then just dragging it in manually.
Yeah.
Let's
turning it off and on again.
Try it like this.
There we go.
Hey, pair programming.
Do you remember a few years ago when Apple added the collaboration features to Pages and Numbers and Keynotes?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember telling all my friends, next year we're going to get Xcode. And I think that was 3 years ago. But it would be so nice just to have multiple cursors here and then maybe Milan like highlighting something. But
yeah.
You can see if you can open .swift files in Pages, maybe.
I guess you could. It fits the theme of this event in terms of workarounds. All right, but we got it to work, so that's good. I always forget the shortcut for just missing that one. So I actually forgot what this one was trying to do. This is some text to take up a lot of space to mess with the list below. Always good. Oh yeah, this was with the keyboards. With So I think I have to then enable the keyboards. All right, let's see. Ooh, okay. So first trying to figure out what the issue is. So normally, let's say you would scroll and you would be on message 51 and you start typing and then it scrolls away. And then when you return, goes back to 51.
Yeah.
Is that not the default?
No, I believe it's the bottom one. So if you look, message 60 is the latest one displayed. So now if you start typing,
yeah, you're right. Ooh.
Which I believe would be really useful if you actually like entering text. So let's say you would have a to-do list and you would have a lot of entries being displayed, and you want to enter something at the bottom.
Yeah. You want to show, you just want to show like the like this, like you want to show the last option because you're going to append it to the end of the list. All right, so
yeah, I think the issue is that it's not animating with the keyboard, so it's kind of like your brain desyncs with where it should be.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I
He
think
mentioned a few problems with that.
Keyboard.
There were a few comments about that because in SwiftUI the keyboard height is basically the full height as soon as the keyboard starts animating in. So you they couldn't change the offset gradually because then if they would just change the offset to the whole keyboard offset, it would be way too high. I don't know what they ended up doing as a solution. If there's anything because they talked about using a lot of dispatches to work around it.
Oh, nice. So, some hard-coded dispatches. Gotta always love that.
Which, that definitely fits into the sort of hacking theme to add a
I'm surprised it's taken us this long to find. So
yeah, but there actually is there is a value that you get from the OS for how long it takes to animate up the keyboard. I'm not sure which one it is. I haven't used it in a while.
Are you talking about
I think it's in the keyboard notification.
Sorry, what are you saying, Milan?
I was thinking you could use something like animate alongside, but you might not be able to hook into the system animations or the system elements for that. What were you thinking, Christian?
I was going to say, I believe it's 0.4 seconds currently on the iPhone, but I think it's slightly different on the iPad. And yeah, you can get the duration from if you do like the keyboard will show NS notification. One of the user info keys will have it in there.
I think that's the one I was thinking about. Yeah. So I'm not sure. Maybe this because maybe this time actually this allows time for the keyboard to actually disappear from the screen before setting keyboard visible. So I guess this is that number that you're talking about here. So I guess you could get that, but then it's also a case of how do you get that here in this on receive? Because maybe I'm not sure which one gets called first, but
and it's tricky too. I find all the keyboard stuff tends to at least in my code tends to fall apart as soon as you get into like the split keyboard stuff on iPads, especially where you can like drag it around on screen. At that point, my perfect solution suddenly is very imperfect.
But I think there's actually no perfect solution for that, because once you have keyboards that can do that kind of stuff, then all the logic that is just behind whatever you're trying to do is just gone because the keyboard can be dragged.
Yeah, I would just crash the app at that point.
And here we have the color clear again. So if it's not clear, that this is a good way to get the full view. This is the way to go.
There we go.
So basically, let's see. So as soon as, where does it actually happen? So when you click the right here, where is that? And then
change of keyboard visible.
Here, so the keyboard height. So I guess this.
So it does use it.
Uses the notifications, and then it'll basically say, it's shown or not, and then if the keyboard height is larger than 0, then so how are they scrolling the actual list then? Where is that magic app? Oh, here.
So what is it?
And the scroll. The scroll is, what's this referring to? Okay, that's the scroll viewer itself. So it's actually, so that actually makes a lot of sense. So it's basically listening, okay, hey, is the keyword being shown? If that's the case, then scroll to the last visible message and anchor it to the bottom. But how are they figuring out what the last visible message is?
Yeah, so what is the last visible index? Visibility keys max. What is the visibility index? Is that a an array or a dictionary? Oh, okay, that makes sense. So every time that they are being, is it that they are being
so they're
laid
getting
out?
notified
He is
every time the
applying.
geometry reader changes.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you could do that.
No. So you can name. Let's see. So you can give a name to the coordinate space of this element here. That's actually quite interesting. So every time it changes, it basically looks at which rows are in view, and then
attaches that, and then I assume they would have to be removed when it's not being displayed.
Yeah, so I think that's here.
Value.
Yeah. It's actually a really cool approach.
That's very clever.
I didn't know this thing. So it's combining a few things there. Still, it's very hacky, but in a like, I mean it in a positive way, because it's using existing things that you can just use in this, combining them in a smart way. The main issue I would have is that it's not perfect. So you would still, like, let's say you're on 77 here, like you still can't see 77 here. So maybe you would want to go one further or something, but then, because it's mostly about having this one in view, but I think in UIKit you would probably be able to exactly put it right here.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I believe they set the bottom anchor to be attached to the keyboard top anchor. So I wonder why that's.
I think it might be there, because this white stuff here at the top. Sorry, Christian, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say, I wonder if it's the padding at the top of the text field or something, because it looks like it's so darn close that it just might be something minor.
I'm just noticing this part now. Like if you scroll and then you wait, and then it snaps to one of them. But yeah, I think it might just be this little padding that's here at the top. So I think if we just do it like that. Maybe I broke it now, but let's see. So, oh no, never mind.
Yeah.
For some reason, I guess it's because according to this list, the bottom is somewhere here, and that would still fit because the keyboard only goes up to here. So it's because we're adding our own thing here on top of it.
Maybe you need some more geometry readers.
Yeah, exactly. To add a little, I guess you could probably solve it by just saying, like changing the offset or something of the list by 8 or 10 or 12 or another magic number.
Something's a little funky with the list separators.
Yeah, I think there's some extra padding going on. Inset somewhere. Well, we'll leave that up to the readers to look into.
No, anyone who does scroll views and keyboards in SwiftUI gets my respect.
Yeah. Now this is, I think, scroll views and like being able to get like more than the default behavior there is something I would love to see at WWDC in a few weeks. Just a lot more customization, a lot more control over those things, especially related to keyboards. So
yeah,
I feel like that's one thing that I expect to come soon, because they are working a lot. They have been working a lot on the scroll views and the lists in general. So hopefully we'll see that.
Yeah, like that's one of, like, I always go back to like the when they first previewed the iPhone back in 2007, and like they scrolled the list and everybody lost their minds. So I'm always like, it just kills me that like it's clearly such a core component that it's not quite there yet. Like it's like every app scrolls. So I just want a little bit more from it.
Yeah.
Definitely agree. So we've come to the end, and even though we don't have any prizes for this event, yesterday we got lucky with a few tiny prizes. But are there any of the entries that anyone has any strong opinions about? I like that we had a combination of like really deep, complex workarounds, actually using the preference key stuff and custom modifiers in custom ways, or like special ways. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we had the simpler ones with the carousel, or with changing the size of the progress view. So yeah, I think it was just an all around really useful entries. Like you can learn a lot from each of them.
No, I agree.
They're all super.
Yeah.
So I think it would be nice if although most of the entries had some documentation about how their approach works, for some of the other ones, it would be nice if they can also add a little bit more comments so that people who are looking at these workarounds can actually figure out, hey, what's going on here underwater? So they can actually, so that beginners or people who are trying to learn can understand a little bit more about what's going on, why it's necessary. I think because it's Tuesday, second day of the week, I think we should come up with 2 winners. Let's choose one that's the complex deep solution, and one that went for more of the simple one. So I'm just gonna
like that approach.
I'm just gonna go for open all of them one by one. So to refresh our memory. So the first one by Enala Barbera, which was about the multi-select. The multis, which I think it was just a nice solution, but it's mostly just a list with selecting them. But it's something you really have to use a lot. So I think it's a really nice use case of a simple component. The list with snap-to is the thing we just looked at, where you actually look at the keyboard appearing and then moving the scroll view up. We have the carousel with just the functional carousel that's never ending. The progress view and the option to customize it to make it fit your app more. Just a very good template for making your own custom progress views. We already had that one. Then we had the rotation matching orientation, so to actually move the views around depending on the orientation of the device, even though you have it locked. Then we have the synced up scrolling with the preference key and the view width and the all the fancy stuff that the pro SwiftUI people know about. And then we also obviously have the router. So I think we can say that
the router gets my vote for complex one, I think, personally.
What I like about the router is that it's something that a lot of people would be able to use. You could set it up and then after it, just put it in your app, and then from that point on, every time you want to do navigation, you can use this approach.
Yeah, I think I heard Milan taking some notes a few points during the router presentation.
Yeah. No, this one is I found it to be always be interesting, like coming up with a good way of, especially pop to root. The one thing I'm concerned about when having too complex of a structure there is the readability of it. When you have this sort of factory that takes care of all of it, and I think as long as it works and as long as people have time to understand it, that's fine. But it can be a bit hard for someone coming like new to a code base to know what is going on where and which view is navigating from what. Whereas I think if you have like a more traditional SwiftUI view where you just have the navigation link and the view where it is pushing the new view, it can be a bit more user friendly. But I think it's a bit of a getting used to.
I think we can all agree that the router functionality would be nice if that would be built in more in this. That's the one that would be very very valuable to have in a lot of cases. What I liked about the synced scrolling one though is that it really showed the super complexity of what things you can do by using all these advanced techniques. Let's see. Oh, you actually can't see my screen anymore. So I would say, oh yeah, you can see it actually. Yeah. So I would say that the progress view and the carousel would be the more simple approaches, combined with, and also the multi-select. So out of those 3, is there any one that you prefer?
I really like the progress view. I mean, it just feels like something that's a very clean solution to the problem. Very readable, very like fulfills this functionality that just adds a bit of nicety to an app. Like you don't have to customize those things, but if you can make them your own custom sort of look and feel, it just adds so much to it.
I agree.
Yeah, and you can use the same structure to make whatever kind of progress view you want. So if you want to use triangles instead of lines, I think it's a very good starting point. So that one would get my vote as well. What about you, Chris?
I would agree.
All right. So then that means that our first winner of today is Diona Lee Samphuk So a little round of applause for her, for him or her. And then all the other ones were really good as well. So don't get us wrong. We also just have to choose
No, I don't
at some
think
point.
they were.
I think
really
so too.
any stinkers.
So yeah, so for the more advanced one, we have these four, and I mean they're all really good, and I think I can learn a lot from all four of them. Does anyone have a preference?
Yeah, I'm sort of leaning towards the navigational one just because it is complex and it does solve something that many people will have to work on. But I also do like this one. I like because it has a very clean implementation.
The rotation one?
Yeah.
I would also want to
tricky.
give points for this one because this had super clear documentation and like the code is super clear to read. So from a learning point of view, I think this one would get my vote because it does some complex things, but doesn't make the entire thing super complex. Whereas like there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in this one as well, but it might be a bit hard to grasp for someone who doesn't really fully understand what's going on there because of maybe a lack of not as many comments there.
And I think this one definitely wins for the hack aspect. Like injecting view control is definitely feels like the hackiest.
Yeah, you're right, and that's actually, since there's UI view representable in there, I guess we technically have to disqualify this one because it's not pure SwiftUI. So at least some minus points for that. Even though they asked me if it's possible to use it, and I said of course, because in the end it's all about getting the results. So yeah.
And then what were those two? Yeah, I do like this one, but I think there's still,
it's not a perfect hack. It's still, there's some issues still there, and
it's another one that's a little bit hard to follow. And I think you can trip over some things if you're not like super comfortable with that code.
And to be fair, it's a tricky one they tried to solve. So hats off for even attempting it.
So I think on the one hand, I would actually, in the Olympics, which the whole SwiftUI series is based on, there's always 3 winners. So I guess we can just have 2 more winners. So I would say that this one gets my vote for one of the winners because it's just a very, very well documented hack, which I think people were trying to get into SwiftUI, into the more complex stuff and try to make it work how they want to. This will be a really good starting point because it has some of the more complex stuff going on while keeping it approachable. It even has a logo. I guess it's because it's part of the Swift package. But can we agree on giving this one the prize for most well explained, most thorough?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So second round of applause for Ryan there.
And then I think we all sort of lean towards the navigational one just because it's such a common problem.
You don't, Chris?
Oh no, sorry, I completely agree. It's I think I learned stuff. It's helpful. It's fancy.
Yeah. And like this one again is really good as well, and I really love all the documentation there as well. Might not be as usable for people, and I think the router one also gives a clear view of like these are the big problems that are not fixed yet in SwiftUI. So this is the kind of hassle you would have to go through if you want to do this router stuff. So I think it really shows that workarounds are still necessary. So how do you say it when there's a like you're not the winner, but you still honorable mention for for the one on the left. But then let's then the router will be the third one. So great job there, and applause for Daniel as well. So I thought this was going to be like a short session today, but it seems we're already at 1.5 hours, so it's probably the same time as we spent yesterday.
Canadians are long-winded.
I think it's also because we had to actually dive into the code while we were actually looking at it. But I think like really good entries today as well. I'm super happy that we got so many good ones because I was a bit scared that we were just going to be talking for an hour about our own hacks, and now we didn't even have to show any of them. So so yeah, thanks so much, Milan and Christian. Maybe.
Yeah, thank you.
So I guess I will see both of you at WWC in 2 weeks. So that's something to look forward to. But
Yeah.
besides little trips, Chris, let's start with you. You just released a big update for Apollo that you've been spending about a year on. So what are you going to be working on for the next 2 weeks? Just some bug fixes and then getting ready for iOS 16, or what's your plan?
Yeah, man, this is always like the weirdest time of the year to be an iOS developer because you don't want to start anything. Because yeah, in 2 weeks it might be provided by Apple as a nice little framework. I think I'm gonna hunker down and I got a few bug fixes for the update to take care of, and after that, I think I'm gonna keep working on my iPad update and just trucking along on some of the navigational aspects of it. And that should pretty much take me right to WWDC, and then see if there's any homework for the summer.
So for people who don't know Apollo, can you give a 1-2 sentence explanation of why they should try it out if they're into Reddit?
Yeah. So it's an app for Reddit. I basically wanted something that felt a little bit more at home on iOS. Like I don't want to disparage anything. I think the official app's great. It's just I wanted something that felt really almost like if Apple tried to build a Reddit app, and so that's what I set it to do. It tries to take advantage of all iOS has to offer, feel really at home on the platform. And so I'm just building that and listening to community feedback and trying to make the best Reddit app up there that I can.
Sounds good. If I look at my my screen time, it seems like you're doing a good job at that. Do you know this app OneSec that actually stops you from using your apps with a shortcut? So every time I open Apollo, it tells me, all right, don't open Apollo. And let's see how many times I used it in the last 24 hours. Oh, only 6 times. It's not too bad.
Okay. That's handy.
But then like, let's see. So yeah, it prevented me from opening it 1,400 times. So saved 3. So yeah, if you're into Reddit, definitely try it out. But it's a bit addictive as well. And Malin, what about you? Let me just get Orbit up on the screen here.
Yeah, awesome. There are many apps that start to be named Orbit now. It's timenorbit.com. Like the space theme really sort of got popular lately. But yeah, it's not about space. I just thought my partner and I, we just thought it was a cool name, a cool sort of memorable name. It's a time tracking and invoicing app. Because time tracking and invoicing isn't always super fun. We at least wanted to have a fun sort of cool theme around it. And it's all about, it's an app for people who are doing freelance work or are doing other client work or need to track their time in general, so that you can track your time and send invoices and get paid for the work that you do. So we've been working a lot on focusing on like the native, like providing a native experience on all of the different platforms. That's sort of how it came to be. We were working on our Macs, so we needed a Mac app. So it has things like idle detections on the Mac and those things. And on iOS, it has things like widgets, and both of them have shortcuts. So yeah.
Is the Mac version, do you use Electron?
No, it's no, I didn't do that.
Sorry, I just messed with you. That's a really pretty website. You guys did an awesome job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so it's all made in SwiftUI?
Yeah. I mean, there are like probably like 15% AppKit, I'd say.
So I guess people should just try it out regardless of if they need a time tracker, just to see what you can do with SwiftUI nowadays.
Yeah, we do have a thing called a tourist mode for space tourism, so you can
you can try it out without putting all your stuff in there. Cool.
Yeah. And at the moment, we actually have a really cool thing. We are actually promoted on the Apple Store. So if you go to an Apple Store and look on the Macs there, you'll be able to see it.
Fancy.
So, no way.
Now when I'm traveling, I go to like all Apple Store or all Apple retail stores in different countries, and I'm like, look, here,
this point of that's mine.
Yeah.
Do you call all the employees over?
Yeah, I do sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, hey, I'd be pretty shameless about it.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that some more in a little over 2 weeks, or a little under 2 weeks actually. So yeah, thanks so much again for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate all the expertise that you brought today as well, and for helping out.
Really appreciate you having us. It was super fun.
Yeah, and can't wait to meet you in a Cupertino soon.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I can't wait to see what you're cooking for us.
Yeah, I'm cooking for 40 people. I don't think that's a good idea. Oh, I guess if I arrive a few days before. All right, so with that, I'm gonna end it. So thanks everyone for watching. Tomorrow we have the animations event with Amos and Guilherme, I think is how you pronounce it. Rambo, most people know. You still have it's like more than 20 hours, I think, to submit your entries there, because we're going to be focusing on like these little micro animations. So if you're working on an app that could benefit from a little bit of flourish here and there, definitely check it out. A lot of work went into to the preparations by Amos there, so looking forward to seeing what you're coming up with. So yeah, thanks everyone, and see you soon.